All right, guys, welcome back, man. This is Wade Stevens, back for another video, man, for California Recovery. Thinking about that's going to be the channel name, man. It's just California Recovery. Guys, it's good to be here, man. The last video, man, we looked at step one. We looked at the powerlessness of step one over the mental obsession described from pages 23 to 43 in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We looked at the powerlessness over the physical allergy or the phenomenon of craving that's described from the doctor's opinion to the top of page 23. And then we look at the unmanageability that's internal, the spiritual malady, which is all the internal unmanageability. The bedevilment's talked about on page 52, right? Full of fear, prey to misery and depression, feelings of uselessness, can't make a living, especially internally, because we get guys that, men and women who have money, who have cars, investments, and their bank account's fine. And they're really looking at it like, what do you mean I can't make a living? And so we looked at all that. How are you making a living with yourself internally? Can you make a living there? Can you make a living in your personal relationships with your partner? So we're looking at all that. And we also looked at the spiritual malady on the doctor's opinion, where it's just restless, irritable, and discontent, clean and sober. No dope, no alcohol in my system. I am restless, irritable, and discontent. I stay in that place until I have my spiritual experience, or until the obsession comes back, takes me to another hit, pill, fix, or drink, and then I'm drinking again to treat the internal malady. So now we're looking at step two. And we got to get to the hopelessness of step one before we're going to be, each step in the 12-step process in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is going to set me up for the next step. If I'm not clear on my foundation in the first step is the foundation because everything else is built upon it. So if my foundation in my first step is shaky, I'm not clear that I really suffer from an illness which only a spiritual experience can conquer. If I'm not clear on that, then I'm going to struggle with step two. Because if I don't really believe that without divine intervention, without an experience with the power greater than myself, if I don't believe that I really suffer from an illness of that kind, what is going to be the catalyst or the desire to really start formulating a conception of God? And so really the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to ask the person that I'm working with whether they have time, because I work with people with time. Sometimes they have more sobriety or clean time than me. Or if I'm working with a brand spanking new person, I'm really going to, do you have a conception of God? Right? We're going to talk about this even in the beginning of when I start sponsoring them. Do you have a conception of God? But especially in step two, we're gonna really dig in deeper to that. So I'm gonna ask them to simply write 10 things they would like God to be and 10 things they wouldn't like God to be. And we're gonna build off that. So what's interesting about this exercise is you draw a line down the center of the page, on one side, 10 things you want God to be, other side, 10 things you don't want God to be. And what's gonna come out of that experience, what's so funny is a lot of us think, oh, my higher power, my higher power is this. I call it Jesus. I call it Allah. I call it the spirit of the universe, creative intelligence. We call it so many different things. But in reality, once you start sponsoring people for a long time, like I have, and I've worked with my sponsor for years, and really what it comes down to is like, how different is our higher power really? If we're looking at this thing and we're looking at enough of these second step exercises, we do this exercise before we even travel through we agnostics. So we want to have that conception first. And really, anytime I look at these 10 things I want God to be, it's always loving, it's always caring, it's always all powerful, it's always just, it's always forgiving, it's always these simple words, these simple characteristics. And then we go to 10 things we don't want God to be. It's always the same thing there too. It's always I don't want my God to be cruel, unjust, unloving, that doesn't care about me, hateful, prideful. I mean, all these things. And at the bottom of that exercise, we're going to just say, hey, let's just roll with the 10 things you want God to be. And it's very simple, because why would I ask somebody that I sponsor to pray to a power or a conception, one, that they don't believe in, but two, they think that doesn't have their best interests at heart? Why would I ask them to pray to that. That's why I want to establish this conception now. We've done it a little bit when we first start sponsoring. Hey, do you have a conception that works for you? Yeah, great. Okay. We'll look at it deeper in step 2. And this is the time. So we got these 10 characteristics down. And what I always point out to people that I sponsor is what's interesting about that is typically without a spiritual connection with God, I am exactly the 10 things I don't want God to be. You know, I'm unjust, I'm unloving, I'm uncaring, I'm not kind, you know, the list goes on. I'm typically going to be dealing with this spiritual malady. I'm going to identify roughly with the 10 things I don't want God to be. But then tapped in with the power, and then the 10 things that I want God to be are the 10 things without a spiritual connection with God that I'm simply not. I don't have the power to pull off being loving, caring. I'm definitely not all powerful. Forgiving, right? I'm full of resentment, all this stuff. I'm typically the opposite of what I want my higher power to be prior to having my experience with God. But as I have my experience with God, it's like it starts changing, and I start really identifying with I start being more of what image of my higher power, right? A speck, you know, where I am loving and I am caring and I am just and I start looking more like the 10 things I want God to be than the 10 things I don't want God to be. So point that out. I mean, that's something that's pointed out to me, and everybody laughs and they identify with it, especially when they're new. And that's a great exercise to do with that and kind of point that out to them. Then we travel into We Agnostics. In page 44, I mean, the first paragraph, it's really just the qualifiers. How do we qualify a new person, right? We looked at that in a previous video. With the first paragraph, we hope we have learned something of alcoholism or addiction, right? We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic, or the addict or the non-addict, right? They have made that distinction because by this time, we've already covered step 1, 50-something pages exhaustively. We should know whether or not we're the real deal or not, right? And so now we can start looking at this conception, right? And we're going deeper into it. It's also going to talk about the idea in multiple places. Am I suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience can conquer? Right? We looked at that multiple times in step 1. It's also reiterating again in We Agnostics in step 2. Am I suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience can conquer? Or could the girl fix it, the pretty girl, or the good-looking dude, or the money, or the job, or the career, or the car, or the Tesla? Can that stuff, am I suffering from an illness which the money can conquer? Or he can conquer, or she can conquer. And we got to be clear on this. And we're going to be clear coming out of this first step of our need to develop this relationship with a power greater than ourselves. Now we have this conception, right? We do this exercise. We got our 10 things. We're going to say, hey, look at page 55. The 2 middle paragraphs. It's going to talk about, for deep down every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured or blocked by calamity of the ego. Those clamors that happen within me, right, that essentially block me or cause separation between me and the power. It says that in one form or other, God is there. It says we found the great reality. I love the big book because it talks about God in a multitude of ways. The great reality, capital Him, H-I-M, Spirit of the universe, creative intelligence, God. I mean, the list goes on and on. So really we're looking at this. It's going to tell me on page 55 where to find this power. And it says the power resides deep down within me. It says it is only there that He may be found, capital H. Right? So if you ever want to see where it says, where do we find this power? It's going to talk about it on page 55. It resides deep down within me. It is only there that He may be found. The great reality. So I like what my friend Dawn would share. And she says, what I came in here looking for, I came in here looking with. You know, because I came here looking for the power to overcome alcoholism, to recover from drug addiction. And the power's been there the whole time. The only thing that's been obscured or blocked. It's been blocked by calamity of the ego, pomp, pride, worship of other things, worship of money, relationships, this, love, intelligence. So it gets blocked by all that stuff. So all it is that I'm blocked from the very power that resides deep down within me. Hence, one of the main purposes of the steps. Spiritual Drano. Let me get unblocked so that I can tap into the power that's been there the whole time, that I didn't have a pathway to access. I didn't have a pathway to get unblocked from the power so that I can access the power that's been residing deep down within me the whole time. And that's one of the main reasons for the steps. Get me unblocked, tap me into the power. That's the deal. So we're also looking at, in step 2, a lot about laying aside prejudice. Laying aside prejudice, even against organized religion. I mean, it's going to talk about lay aside, lay aside, lay aside. Hence where we get this prayer called the lay aside prayer that we do in my sponsorship lineage. God, please lay aside everything I think I know about the 12 steps, the big book, my disease, myself, the program, and especially about you, God. And it continues from there. God, I beg you, please, for an open mind and a new experience with the 12 steps, big book, and so on and so forth. We get the lay aside prayer or the set aside prayer from we agnostics, because it's going to talk about over and over again, lay aside prejudice, express even a willingness, laid aside. We're doing that prayer from step 1, first direction, doctor's opinion, read, highlight, interchange, right? We're going to do that from the very beginning, because I need to lay aside everything. The person that thinks they know everything about this power is going to come to find that they don't know anything at all. They're never going to come to learn or experience anything new. And I need to have a new experience with God that's going to be sufficient to get me recovered from this thing called alcoholism and drug addiction. And that's the deal. So I need to lay aside what I think I know, any preconceived notions. We get guys sometimes, they know God, they know Christ, they know this, and they know the Bible real well, but they're going to wonder why our brand of spirituality works and theirs doesn't. It's going to talk about that in working with others in step 12. They're going to wonder why, I have a conception of God, but how come I can't access the power of God that I need to live? And we're going to be looking at that. So we go into step 2 and we're looking at this laying aside prejudice, express even a willingness. We're going to be looking at it throughout we agnostics. And so step 2 is really key. Step 2 is the cornerstone. And if you know anything about the cornerstone, it's the stone that goes in the corner of the foundation in my first step. So it's the cornerstone. We're going to look at the third step next. But the second step is my cornerstone. And it's going to make sense that we're going to look at this in the direction in step 5 when we get there, the returning at home for an hour. We're going to look at this idea, sit at home for an hour. Are the stones properly in place? The cornerstone in my second step, the keystone in my third step. Are they properly in place? Right? And one other thing that I want to point out in step 2, it gives me a very simple question. And it gives me a question that there's no more postponing or evading. Either God is everything or else he is nothing. What is my choice to be? Now, I've heard it said that God can be everything, which encompasses nothing, but God can't be nothing. Right? So it's like if God is everything, then he's also nothing. Right? It can encompass both. And so really that's really pretty straightforward. You know, it's like, and for the rest of my life, am I willing to place God, that God's going to be everything in my life? Right? He's going to apply the job that I need, the career, the educational path, the investment path. And he's going to be the fixture and the mainspring of my relationships, whether it's intimate or not. Is God going to be running my show, where I need to go and speak at, who I need to sponsor, who my sponsor needs to be, this YouTube channel that I need to do. I mean, it's like to get the message out there, like really, is God going to be everything in my life? Am I going to go to God for everything in my life before I go take a test, before I do another YouTube video, before I get into a relationship? Am I going to pray on this? Am I going to take God? Is God going to be the cement in this relationship with my sponsees? Or when we get prayed up beforehand, praying in, praying out, going and speaking, carrying a message, praying up, praying out, guiding, always asking for guidance. You know, is God going to be everything in my life? Or else he's going to be not, or is he going to be nothing? Now, if he's going to be nothing and it's not going to be everything, then it's like I'm in a place where it's like we can't move on, because if God's not going to be everything in my life, and my life depends on this spiritual experience or this awakening with God through the steps, and if I really truly believe that I'm beyond human aid, then God will be everything in my life. And if I'm not really, and it goes back to that importance, every step in the book goes back to step 1. Because if I'm not convinced that my life is really beyond human aid, that these 3 symptoms of addiction, alcoholism, place me in a place where I need a spiritual awakening or an experience, God's not going to be everything in my life. These amends aren't going to be. Everything's connected. This inventory, this 5th step, secrets, all this stuff we're going to burn out and stop halfway through the work, because we're not really sold on step 1, right? So if I'm having trouble with step 2, we're looking at the atheist, we're looking at the agnostic. The atheist, no belief, no conception, doesn't believe that God exists whatsoever. The agnostic, right, sees God working in other people's lives, but doesn't believe that God's going to work in his or her life, that God's not going to work for them, that God doesn't care about them. That's going to be the more agnostic temperament, right? And thank God it says in We Agnostics, more than half of our membership were of exactly that type, the atheist or the agnostic type, right? Then they became believers and had faith later on, right? And one key point I want to touch on, we'll do some more in step 2, but another key point is we're the type of people that are the dope in hand type people, right? It's not like I'm going to, speaking to my addicts out there, you're not going to give somebody a 20 or $100 and, all right, just, bring the dope back, bring the drugs back. We're the dope in hand kind of people. Here's the money. Here you go. Give me my drugs. Here's your money. There you go. And it's going to talk about that in one sentence in We Agnostics. It says we gained access to and believe in a power greater than ourselves. It doesn't say we believe in a power greater than ourselves and then we gain access to. We're the type of people, we're the dope in hand type of people. Allow me to gain access first, as the sentence says. We gain access to and believe in a power greater than ourselves. See, we come to see that I need to gain access to the power first in this process, and then I'll believe. We're the dope in hand kind of people. Show me the dope. Show me. Hold it out. So we're the type of people that need to gain access to the power first of God, and then we believe wholeheartedly. Because I had to have my spiritual awakening first before I really could fully believe in this power. Because I was really sold before even looking at step 1 that my life was beyond human aid. There needed to be some divine providence. And if something didn't happen between me and this power, it was death or insanity, all the places that we end up. And I knew that I could never recover if there wasn't something greater than me to tap into. So we tap into the power, then we believe. We don't believe typically first, and then we tap into the power, right? Maybe haphazardly we do it. But in most cases, we're the dope in hand type people, right? Give me the stuff, show me, and then I will believe, right? Let me take a hit, let me take a drink, and then I will believe. Once I gain access to the power, once there's the effect produced, then I believe. So we're going to do some more and look deeper into a second step. But those are some main points in step 2 to kind of take a look at. Look, it's going to mention prejudice 9 times in We Agnostics, I believe. And so it's going to talk about laying aside this prejudice that we have, even against organized religion. And it's kind of opening me up in step 2. Step 2 is going to open me up as I get opened up through, steps 3 through 9, 10. It's going to really open me up for 10 and 11. Step 2 is going to really crack the door with the addict or the alcoholic. And then I'm going to have my experience through the rest of the steps. And then we're going to really be cracked wide open to really do some work in 10 and 11. They correlate. Step 2, cracking the door a little bit. Let me get into this conception. Let's start looking at this laying aside prejudice. Okay, maybe it is, maybe isn't. Let's see. And then we get opened up to steps 10 and 11, which is really we're going to build on that. Talks about growing in understanding and effectiveness, the consciousness of this power. And there's a lot of work to do in 10 and 11. So step 2 is kind of just, let's crack the door a little bit, right? Came to believe, right? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't this power. Let's see. But like I said, we'll close off with that. Either God is everything or else he is nothing. What is my choice to be? Is God, and we're going to look at that later on in step 3, is God going to be my director, right? My principal. Is he going to empower me? And there's so much stuff we're going to look at in step 3, but God's going to be everything in my life. I've seen, based on running my life on self-will, I burn it to the ground. Nothing good comes from it. It's not fertile. It's not good soil. And with God, everything seems to blossom. Internally, externally, my life blossoms because of this connection with God. Not because of anything of myself. anything of myself, and I'm going to see it. Step 1, I'm going to see it. Step 3, especially, I'm going to see it in step 4, step 9. I'm going to see it in and of myself. I am nothing. And I like when it talks about that in Bill's story. In and of myself, I'm nothing. Right? Without God, I'm nothing. But with God, everything and anything is possible and achievable. And that's a really cool thing. Not only that I'm going to be able to get recovered and stop drinking and get loaded, but with this faith and this power, it's going to guide me and direct me with this intuition on exactly where I need to be and where I need to go and who I need to help and the correct way to approach each individual that needs help. And, because everybody's a little different, and, you get to curtail, going to show you how to curtail, your style with each person. You come across, you don't come at them the wrong way. You can be more useful, and really my life has blossomed and taken me to places that I never thought were possible for me, or maybe for you, but not attainable for me. And I've just been blown away with this experience, even before starting the steps. But looking at step 2 in this conception, and really we'll close with this idea. What I always tell everybody that I sponsor is very simple. In step 2, we're just writing about 10 things you would want God to be. But I always tell them, let's see as you keep moving through the work if that's really what your God is. And it becomes more than just, I hope that's what God is. And without a shadow of a doubt that that's exactly what God is. That God is loving. And I got to see that. If God wasn't loving, why would he put me into RN school? Why would he allow me to help men and women and take them through the steps? Why would he allow me to go speak at all these places, right? I didn't even make one amends yet, and he's got me helping people and speaking, and as I'm traveling through this work. And if God wasn't loving, why would he, before I even made one amends to one of his children that I've harmed, why would he save my life and get me recovered so I can have a really cool internal existence and external existence if God was not loving? If my God was a condemning God, it could have just easily said, wait, I'm not helping you. You're screwed. Your life depends on an experience with me, and I deny that. I'm not going to help you. And that's totally opposite of what happened. So I start really seeing that God is loving and caring and compassionate and all-powerful, because we deal with a powerful illness, a deadly, fatal, progressive illness. And so my God is all-powerful. He's got me recovered and doing and moving around freely wherever I want to go and wherever he wants to take me. So we really start seeing those 10 things that I hope that God was. Now, as we travel along this 12-step path, I really start seeing that's what God is without a shadow of a doubt. That's what God is. So I love you guys. Please like, comment, subscribe. Again, this is Wade, man, California Recovery, and I just hope that it meets you well. I hope the message meets you well. We're dying out here, and so I just hope this message reaches you guys well. And any feedback, or you want to tap in, man, I'm out here in Southern California. Tap in, comments, whatever, and we'll link up. We'll tap in. I love you guys. Thank you.